Hey, it's Christopher, and you're listening to Super Fantastic Above Average Racing Spectacular. Another week in the books. It's All-Star Weekend. It's All-Star Race. I know All-Star races will quite have no one, not as exciting as they used to. I know that the field is so thin now. There's less drama. They're up the ante with the fan vote, right? People offering to grow back their hair, pull out all the stops to get that fan vote. And we all remember Keeney Wallace years ago. I want to go through the fan vote winners through the years, or people that raced their way in through the opens or sprints or whatever you call those events anymore. I'll be honest, I haven't watched an all-star race in probably 5 years, 6 years. Last time Jimmy McMurray won. So not a lot of interest, but I know there's still some people out there who enjoy the All Stars and get to see all the greats come together. It's sort of a dying breed, is it not? In all sports, I mean, the NBA. I don't really care about that. It's the skills competition, I think, in the NBA that people care about more. The Pro Bowl is all but dead. I was watching the Pro Bowl these days. The cool concept a couple of years ago, Michael Irvin versus Chris Carter, but I didn't watch it. Baseball's All-Star Game. Haven't watched that in a lot of years. I know the Home Run Derby still generates a lot of interest, and it's a spectacle in itself. But NASCAR, I don't think the All-Star race has been there for a while either. For me, anyway. I'm just saying. So Clint Boyer is on the pole. If you're interested in for the All-Star event, he drew the pole. I think for the open race, whatever they call that now, Daniel Hemrick. On the front row is Michael McDowell. Car 34, where are you? You're on the front row with Daniel Hemrick, but you won't be there at the end. I'm sorry, Michael McDowell supporters. It's been an extremely tough year for front row and Michael McDowell, but I love the number 34 for various reasons lately, and it's very significant in my life, number 34, but it's neither here nor there. So I'm going to recap Kansas this week. A lot of news events in NASCAR this week. The Cup Series, it's you're going to start to see as the summer months roll on, more news in regards to next season, where people are going to be racing, what team they're going to drive for, and the playoff picture is going to fan out a bit more as it is right now. It's kind of clustered at the top with multiple winners. Keselowski's a multiple winner now. Well, he was already, but now he's tied with Kyle Busch for 3. So the battle for 4 will rage on. Who gets to number 4 first? Can the driver stall at 2 get to 3? Create a log jam up there, and say what you will. Less cars in the field. It doesn't quite have that same appeal it used to. I'll be the first to admit it. I don't nearly enjoy NASCAR as much as I used to. However, these drivers who have seemed to take a stranglehold on the competition, they have that ability to still generate some interest, and I'm still interested. It's just not as much as I used to be, and we'll talk about that another time. But we'll move on to Kansas here. So the fallout: Brad Keselowski, 3 wins for this guy. 3rd race of 2019. He ties, as we said, he's tied Kyle Busch for 3rd. But before we get to that, in case you're interested, a recap. As I'm recording this, it's the day of the All-Star race. I'm a bit behind this week. Kyle Busch wins the truck race last evening. It's 56 for him now in a career. He's pushing close to 60 for the trucks. He'll get there. I mean, probably do. I think he might be at his limit for the trucks for this year. We'll see. Probably him back in 2020. He'll reach 60. He's going to even reach 70, but just thought I'd throw that out there too, since we were on the topic of Kyle Busch. And the late charge here for Keselowski on Alex Bowman. So he ties his 2017 and 2018 record win totals already so early into the year. I think we're, 12 races into this? That's pretty impressive. So it's good for him. He didn't get his first win in first two wins in 17 until his first two wins of 2017. Are identical to the first two wins he pulled off this season, Martinsville and Atlanta. That's a bit bizarre. And then didn't even win last year until Darlington. Remember that late charge he had in the summer? He wins the 500. Then he wins Vegas. He wins Indianapolis. All of a sudden, he's a house of fire. And then he just kind of cooled off in the playoff. Had a disappointing exit. I think to get back to we're gonna when you talk about Brad Keselowski, and we've seen the evolution of Brad Keselowski, and he we'll talk about this guy. I guess we'll get him out of the way now. We'll talk about him, Mike Midler, long time Camping World, or when it was known as Camping World, and even Craftsman Trucks. He's been since this inception in '95 with the teams that he's owned. Sold the team off prior to this year. Was diagnosed, I believe, with cancer a couple years back. Kept the team going. Underfunded team. Fortunately, he met his demise this last week. Keselowski paid tribute to him in the winner's circle, as he was responsible for putting Keselowski in a truck race years ago, a couple truck races. Actually, I think he had about 6 career starts for him. So getting him that exposure, and it's nice to see these guys pay tribute to one of the smaller. And that was a likable team, likable owner. Everybody always roots for the underdogs, and unfortunately, Mike Midler is no longer here. Gave some tremendous opportunity. Look at the names that have driven truck for him, and he's given career starts to, and maybe exposure to for the very first time in their career. Carl Edwards, and we all know what Carl Edwards went on to do. Phenomenal talent. Should be champion. I think Carl Edwards, if you look at the statistics and this playoff format, could have won 2-3 championships. Brad Keselowski, we know what he's gone on to do. Win 30 plus races now. 30 wins, going for 30 plus. Champion in the sport. Ken Irwin Jr. Met his ultimate demise in 2000, but had a tremendous, and I don't like to use the word potential, untapped potential, or what was the potential of this driver. Kenny Irwin was good, and I don't know how good could he have been. Never know. Unfortunately, wasn't around long enough to really see how far he could have gone. Jamie McMurray, and we all know Jamie McMurray went on to accomplish great things with Ganassi. He had a run with Roush Fenway as well. Won a race there, Daytona. We all know Jamie McMurray he's won at Indy, has won the Indy 500. He's won the Brickyard. He has won the Daytona 500. Clutch performances, won at Charlotte a bunch of times. Justin Allgaier, who was a thick into the championship battle in the Xfinity Series last year, sort of having an off year, but we all know Justin Allgaier's won a lot of Xfinity races, so he's given some career starts to these guys. 24 years in the Truck Series, 301 starts. The best finish for his team came in 2015 with an individual by the name of Bobby Pierce, and I'll be honest, I'll apologize to Bobby Pierce. I don't know much about Bobby. I looked up his career stats on Racing Reference. I think he was somewhat of a dirt track racer. He finished second at Eldora in the race, won one of the heats actually in that event in 2015. And that was his first career start. I think he had a pole for them as well. So just a sad turn of events. I think he was 68 years old. Sold the team off, as we said, before the start of this season. It's pretty unfortunate when anyone passes on, and it was nice for Brad Keselowski to acknowledge Midler in the winner's circle, as McMurray did on social media platforms this week. So unfortunate for his demise. Really sad to hear about that. But Keselowski pays tribute to Mike Midler in the winner's circle at Kansas last week. So he leads 12 laps in this race. Not really anything, he's got the speed, but he just came up clutch here, leading the 12. The speed's there. I mean, he's led 100 in the last, since the Martinsville win. He's led 151 laps. So there's been speed with Penske. I just think they were off. And then this race, too, Logano and Ryan Blaney didn't have. Ryan Blaney's kind of marred in the slump there. But this is 30 career wins. He ties Kurt Busch on the wins list at the moment. This is the second win for this team at Kansas. The site of I think the race really that made him a star. That we started to see Brad Keselowski come into his zone. I know. Let's just circle back to that. I mean, this was the start of his rise in Cup. Was it Kansas back in 2011? He had previously done some work with, and we all know he won with James Finch, the underdog story at Talladega in 09. Controversy on that, as I said, he took out Carl Edwards, and that would come back to bite him later. And then Hendrick had him in the 25 car, when I think it was the GoDaddy sponsorship. Couldn't retain him for whatever reason. I know Hendrick used him in some Cup starts, and he was pretty impressive in those starts. And then he had that one-off year in the 12 car with Penske, and this is where he was graduated to the blue number 2, the Miller Lite car, and he made it his own, man. And I think this is where, and he got the number 2, and less than a year later, he was a champion. So he wins this race at Kansas, gets the better of Dale Earnhardt Jr. that day. I think that's when we started to see the rise of Brad Keselowski, and this is where he is right now. So he ties Busch on the all-time wins list. So we go back to the stat debate. We talked a lot about Kurt Busch. I mean, Hall of Fame, I know Hall of Fame, we don't talk about Hall of Fame a whole lot when a driver's still fairly young, I guess, in their inception in their career. And but as the career progresses, you start to analyze and see, is these drivers, are they fits for the Hall of Fame, and what's the criteria for the Hall of Fame? Brad Keselowski now tied at 30. Both have championships. Kurt, 2004 champion, wins it under the first ever playoff format, known as the Chase back then, I believe. And Brad Keselowski wins it in 2012. Same format. So 30 wins. They both got the 30 wins, but Kurt's been around a lot longer. Kurt debuted, I believe, in 2001. I'm gonna say, I'm not 100% accurate on that, or 2000. It would have been, actually might have been even 2000, but ran for the Rookie of the Year, I believe, in 2001, and was eventually won by Kevin Harvick. That is right. It was 2001, but we did see him in some races in the year 2000. So he's been around a lot longer than Keselowski. Almost had a decade on him. And the stats are not that far off. You have Kurt in the top 5 departments got 140. BK's got 107. And the top 10's 173 to Kurt's 288. Poles, Kurt's got 27. BK's got 14. So if you look at the statistics, not a lot of difference there. It's not really, the gap is not that wide. And I think they're both going to be in the Hall of Fame. Adding the extra championship, I think solidifies it. I know. But the stats are just there. And Bobby Labonte's on the ballot. And he didn't quite make the cut, but he's going to be on that ballot. He's only got the one title. Terry Labonte, I believe, is in the Hall of Fame, and he's got the two victories, 2 championships. A lot less victories than these guys. So Kurt, I know Kurt's in a position this year where a second title is not out of the question for Kurt Busch either. Neither is it for Brad Keselowski. Lots of time. Penske's got the 4 wins in 2019. And the Penske and JGR battle, just keep trading battle. I know they had a little break there when Chase Elliott won Talladega, but they're back to winning. But Hendrick is really coming on strong. Hendrick is starting to make some noise, make their presence felt on a weekly basis. This is what is required. I think, had this continued to be a JGR Penske battle, I know that it pretty much still is. I mean, the one win, Talladega, it's a crapshoot. You knew someone else has an opportunity to win that wasn't a part of the Penske team or part of the JGR camp. But Hendrick's rise here, them coming on strong, could become a 3-team battle. But Hendrick's got to put those cars back in the winner's circle. And Alex Bowman, seeing the rise of a star here. He's probably going to win the All-Star vote, where he's going to either race his way in or win. He's red hot right now, maybe one of the hottest drivers on the circuit. And it's unlikely, you think about that 6 weeks ago, you would have said Alex Bowman was going to be the hottest driver on the circuit. You might have said, nah, Bowman, nah. Well, he's got 3 consecutive runner-up finishes. So one of two things is going to happen. This is just I don't know, he's caught magic dust in his shoes and he's just killing it. Or they're seeing a real legitimate rise of a star here. 63 laps led in that time frame last week at Kansas. He had a good car. It was up front. Almost wins it. Could he win that race? And it looked like it for a while. He's had fast cars, 3 consecutive top 10s. The speeds in the top. He's qualified in the top 5. 2 out of those 3 races. He's 12th in the standings now. He's leading the Hendrick charge, him and with Chase Elliott. I know he really wants to get in that All-Star race bad. And he talked about how bad he wanted this win. And Keselowski kind of threw shade at him. I don't care what people say. Keselowski, okay, was he sincere with the comment when in the winner's circle? Alex Bowman's going to win a lot of races. A lot more races. Okay, you could say that. And this could be true. This could be a valid statement. This could be absolutely true. That Brett Keselowski got it dead on bullseye. Alex Bowman is going to win a lot. And that could be entirely true. It's just, you don't say that in the winter after you've won your 30th race. You won a ton of races. He's a guy who is really wanting this one. Really needed this one. This could be a career changer for him. Gets the popular 88 back in the winner's circle, not to mention either. People want to see the 88 in the winner's circle. That's what they want. They want to see the 88 in the winner's circle. Could have been a landmark win for Hendrick. Gets another driver, another name that Hendrick could have made, and he still could. It's just, Alex Bowman, there was a bit of despondency in his voice when he climbed out of the car and he gets interviewed. He wanted this one badly, and I think he earned it. He raced, he was top notch. He earned this. So him not to walk away with it, and for Keselowski to say, nice try, buddy, you're going to get there, kind of pissed me off too. But that's just the way it is. Can he get the All-Star vote? Can he get elected by the faithful of NASCAR to get in? Possibly. Or he could just race his way in. He's had a good enough car than in recent weeks. But his Charlotte record, but you can't really base it on that. I think momentum is what's carrying the 88 at this point. I think Alex Bowman has done yeoman's work in that car, and I expect to see him win a race sooner than later. Pocono. I still think Pocono is one to watch in the calendar. He had a great run last July at Pocono. Keep your eyes on Alex Bowman, folks. This is Hendrick's making this guy, and I think it's, we talked about, ever since we talked about it on the program, but potentially him being replaced by Kyle Larson. That theory that was floating around there that Larson's recent struggles with Ganassi could lead to his exit from Ganassi, and could they swap? I mean, could Alex Bowman, and I still think we look back at that theory that we touched on last couple weeks ago, if they were to do a driver swap and Bowman takes the 42 car, is it a case where Bowman makes Ganassi a really good team 2-3 years down the line? They're already a pretty good team now, but they're nowhere, I think, in the category of Hendrick. Obviously, Ganassi's accomplished great things across all forms of motorsports, but just NASCAR, he's always been good, but I just think not good enough. And just look back, if we would have captured that championship in 2002 at Sterling Marlin, what would be, it gives it that legitimacy. And then you got 2 young guys potentially in Ross Chastain and John Hunter Nemechek. Things looking up for Ganassi. It's just Bowman, it could make sense. I mean, but we're not going to touch on that right now. I think Bowman is starting to make the 88 his own, and some legit roll tide heat for Mr. Bowman. I like. Eric Jones. So 3rd place here, pisses Clint Boyer off in the end. Controversial block. Boyer says something along the lines of, this is the Kentucky Derby. He is very displeased on the pit lane with Mr. Jones. So come on, Eric. You're better than that, or you know better than that. I mean, does he really? I don't know. A lot of news about Jones, too, and his future in the 20. You could speculate. This is a third-place finish for him. Ties the best finish of 2019 at Daytona 500. And we talked about that dust that put Boyer on the pit lane after. So this is his third top 10 finish in the last 6 races. 2 of those top 5. So Eric Jones is feeling the pressure we talked about. He has to be. Look how successful Busch has been this year. Denny Hamlin knocks off 2 wins after going winless last year. Martin Truex Jr. is being Martin Truex Jr. And then you start to see yourself. What am I doing? How am I contributing to this? I'm just along for the ride. And that's the case with both young guys, I think, in the Penske JGR debate, or the battle that's waging on this year. Blaney's been kind of good, but can't close it off. And Jones is sort of in the shadows. What's going to happen to him? There's a sense of urgency, I think, still with this team that he has to win to secure that seat next year, because it's going to, as the summer goes on and Christopher Bell continues to rewrite the history books in Xfinity, probably on his way to a championship, but with this unique format, wouldn't be shocked he walks away with no title in the end. It doesn't matter. He doesn't need to win the Xfinity title. He's Cup ready, and he belongs in the Cup Series. Winning the Xfinity title is just the cherry on top of the sundae. He don't need to win nothing. Christopher Bell has made a name for himself, and the time he's won 11 races in such a short period of time, and we talked about all the greats he tied last week, all the champions that he's tied with now. It's a place for him in Cup. It could be in the 20 car, or does he go somewhere else? Gibbs would prefer him to stay within the organization, obviously, because when you have a generational talent, which I think Christopher Bell is, there's a lot of shades of Kyle Busch in there. You don't want to let that get away. Take a swig there, Monster Energy. Very sweet. This is absolute zero, and it's absolutely fantastic. If you haven't drinking it, well, get a lot of it. You don't want to be the regular formulas there. A lot of sugar in those things. You got to cut back on the sugar when you're training. Let off some of that, you know. Chase Elliott, 4th place finish here. So this is his 3rd consecutive top 5 finish. He's clicking here. Chase is woken up. He's woken up the sleeping giant at Talladega. And a Coke 600 win for him. He's in the All-Star. Remember, he keeps getting the All-Star, the vote. We'll talk about the vote. He's in the main event this year. It's part of the big show. He's led 235 laps in the last 3 races. This guy's got speed. These Hendrick cars, they're fast. Especially Bowman and Elliott here. They're leading the charge. He's 4th in the standings now. He's mixing it up with the big boys here since Texas. He's really gradually moving up the ranks. The momentum, he's got to keep that going. I think could be his best season. 2019. This could be his magical year. We know he had a great year in 18. That win at Watkins Glen really set the table. And he had a great playoff. It's about capitalization now. You have to be there in the end. I still think he's a top 4 guy somewhere soon. I've been predicting him in the top 4 the last 2 years. He's let me down in that respect. But I think when you look at the semantics, the first year, he was going to get in and out on points, and that was going to be equally impressive. And then he gets dumped by Denny Hamlin. Remember that big altercation at Martinsville in the end? And he had some podunk redneck fan there on the pit lane. Let me at him. Let me at Denny. I'm going to clock him one. That was funny. But Elliott just looked good last year. He had a solid playoff. Kansas, I remember watching Kansas, the tail end of that, and thinking, this guy can remain in contention, could be looking at the champion, and that could be the case this year. Wins early at Talladega. He's got all summer long to click off those wins, and some good racetracks coming for him. Remember Michigan, him and Kyle Larson. That's a good battle. Those two on the same team, that'd be phenomenal. Clint Boyer, 5th place finish, outside pole at Kansas. Can't get it done and make good on his home track. He talked about his displeasure with Eric Jones at the end. He was legitimately in the hunt for this, and I feel like Clint Boyer is leading this Stewart-Haas Racing charge as of late. He's so good. And I think we're sort of looking past him, how good he's really been. I know, and the season looked like a roller coaster. You look at the statistics up and down, but it's trending up. It's like the game on Price is Right, the cliffhanger, the guy, the yodeler. The fucking guy is going up, 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 but he doesn't want to go over the fucking cliff. Boyer's not there yet. It's just the person's getting, how do you play that game? I think it was you have to guess the price, and if the price is whatever, the yodeler goes up, but you don't want him to go over the cliff. Clint Boyer's not going to go over the cliff. He's not going to be that fucking yodeler and the cliffhangers that fucking crashes and burns, right? Boyer is going to maintain this momentum. He's on the pole for the All-Star race. And it's just the All-Star race, but you could use this race, and I don't know what the goal is. It's a dash for cash, in my opinion. That's what the All-Star race is. It's a spectacle for the fans of the sport. This is a test session for the 600 next week. For the guys that are actually going to make the main event tonight, you can play around with a lot of scenarios and different setups and see if this is something that could work next week in the 600. But last 7 races, props to this motherfucker. No wins, obviously. 3 top 5s, 6 top 10s. Clint Boyer is outclassing the rest of his Stewart-Haas teammates. This is his 3rd year in the Boyer Stewart-Haas racing experiment. Like I said, I'll be the first to admit it. When he was signed in 2015, I was like, grown. Did that 1 year prison term with HS Scott Racing, was his worst season of his career. 17 was running really well. 18, he gets the wins. This year, it looks like he's the unlikely candidate to be a champion, but is very much somebody that should be on the radar for the championship. He's just doing great work for Stewart-Haas Racing. He's finally settling in. I think he's got to get that win this summer to legitimize what he's doing and how good he's been. But I think he's going to be one of those guys come playoff time. If this continues, Clint Boyer performs at this level, unlikely champion. We talk about unlikely champions all the time. Clint Boyer would be considered an unlikely champion. He doesn't have a lot of the wins to back him up. I know he went on some struggles there with Michael Waltrip. It would probably seem like an eternity ago, but he finally broke through last year, broke that disgusting win streak. He's got to get back to the winner's circle this year, and I think he's going to. So Jimmie Johnson, a 6th place finisher, getting in on the Hendrick Act, getting in not quite as fast as his young gun teammates, Chase Elliott and Bowman, but he's, we'll talk about it now. I guess we'll circle back to it. There's a report that came out that Johnson's extremely frustrated with his position the struggles. He's marred in a winless drought that's over 2 years old now. The car doesn't have a lot of speed. You lose Lowe's as the sponsorship, longtime sponsor. You have a new sponsor. Contract's up at the end of the year, so he says there's reports out there that he's going to think about the future and what could be next for him. He may not return to the 48 car in 2021. And I think that's why we might have heard about the Kyle Larson rumor and innuendo a few weeks ago. And before I start breaking down the scenarios of who could be in the 48, does he indeed call it a career? He's still stalled at 83 wins. I think he can get to the 84th, but it looked for a while that Johnson, with all those championships that he accumulated, that he was on his way to shattering records, that he was going to be 100-plus race wins in his career. It's starting to look less and less of a reality now. He cannot even get to 84. Could get to 84, 85. I think that's reasonable. He doesn't even need to. If he stalls at 83 the rest of his career, he got the 7 titles. I know that 8 title is a reality. That 8 title is something that they're high on his list. High on his list of things he has to do in his career. I don't think it has to legitimize his career, though. I think he's good enough without having to win this championship for the 8th time to... He's a legend. He's in the Hall of Fame. His statistics are mind-blowing. Doesn't need to do anything else. He runs the Boston freaking Marathon. This is an amazing individual, Jimmie Johnson. But can he recapture some of that success at a place that used to bear his name, his sponsor's name, the Charlotte Motor Speedway, Lowe's Motor Speedway back then? He's got 8 wins at Charlotte, 4 wins in the 600. His last came in 2014. He was 5th there a year ago. He's got 3 top 10s in the last 6 races and a pole at Texas. And he was 5th at Texas. So there's the signs of life that he's back in the top 5. He's 6th here. He's 1 position away from getting into the top 5 here at Kansas. And he only had 2 top 5s the previous season. There's still a little left in the tank, and there's signs of that when you see him have a good day. Can he recapture some of that success at Charlotte? A place that was quite magical for him, and a place that I think kind of made his career. You look at the statistics there in Dover. These are mind-blowing statistics. But how much longer? And he's a competitive individual, Jimmie Johnson. How much longer do you take struggling in a car and not being in contention for the wins? Going through this, I think, as he said in the article, he's very patient. He believes in this team. He's a lifelong Hendrick driver. He's not going anywhere. I think if he will not continue, either 2 scenarios are going to happen with Jimmie Johnson. How this ends for him. He's either going to call it a career, vacate the 48. I can't see Hendrick releasing him and moving on from him, and him even racing somewhere else. I'm going to evaluate this after the year, but he's 16 in the standings, and only the 1 top 5 finish, and Elliott and Bowman are on the rise. Johnson's not even in the playoff mix at this point in contention. He's going to be one of those drivers, unless he wins, that's going to keep fading back and forth to in the playoff one week, outside the next, based on the trend you're seeing with his season, the way it's gone. I don't see Hendrick releasing him, though. I think they're going to stick with him. They changed the crew chief to try to put some spice into this team by giving him a younger crew chief, Kevin Mindering. I don't know if it's working at all. Chad Knaus is sort of in that, as he said, Ralph Macchio, Pat Morita model of the Karate Kid in Miyagi, where you get the younger talent in William Byron who needs the seasoning, and you put him in there with the Zen master, Chad Knaus. It's not working well for them either. So these are the 2 weakest teams, the 24 and the 48. And who would have thought you would have said that years ago, the 24 and the 48, the weakest teams in the Hendrick stable? Well, that's the case in 2019. So Johnson, there's 2 scenarios here. We're going to continue with the Johnson theme here for a minute. We all know about Christopher Bell. We all know about Tyler Reddick. I always say Riddick. It's Reddick, is it? Is it not? So Tyler Reddick, who we're going to talk about momentarily here, Christopher Bell, Cole Custer, big names that are available that are cup ready. It's the 48. If Hendrick doesn't really have a prospect in their developmental right now. They don't really have a developmental system with the Xfinity Series. But then JR Motorsports is a team that uses Hendrick engines, and it's basically the Hendrick team in Xfinity, Dale Jr.'s team. You got Noah Gragson, who hasn't really turned a lot of heads. Zane Smith, who's still just getting comfortable in the Xfinity cars at a few starts. Who do you move into the 48? Who gets that opportunity? So I think that's why Hendrick might be this could be the second coming of Hendrick here, and their dominance over the sport for the next several years. If you can get a Christopher Bell or a Tyler Reddick in your organization who's shown great potential, there's that word again, potential. I hate that word, but it's true. These 2 drivers are cup ready. Cole Custer, you have the long-standing relationship they had with Haas Automation at one point when they were a Chevy team. I can't see anyone in Stuart Haas parting ways with any of those drivers. The logical choice would be Bowyer, but Boyer's having the best season of the bunch this year. He doesn't show in the standings, but statistically, he's having a better year than Kevin Harvick. So any of these young talents you have, Harrison Burton, let's throw him in there. Let's throw any of these names in here that the younger drivers, you have Grant Enfinger, I know he's having a good year in the truck series, could be the truck champion. Brett Moffitt, there's so many good drivers out there that Hendrick could scoop up. Ross Chastain, let's throw him in there. John Hunter Nemechek, the list goes on and on and on. It's becoming a much younger driver sport. Johnson's at the twilight of his career. What happens to him? I'm thinking Hendrick's going to get themselves Christopher Bell. My God, if that happens, this is going to be crazy. Crazy good for Hendrick. But I think let's not write off Jimmie Johnson just yet. I can't see a rebirth. I can't see him turning back the clock and all of a sudden you're going to see the Jimmie Johnson of old. That's clearly not going to happen. I think it's time for the 48 fans to come to that realization that Johnson doesn't quite have the capabilities behind the wheel as he once did, but still a very formidable race car driver who is in search of career win number 84 and 85. Don't think he'll even reach Jeff Gordon's 93. Could happen, but the 8th title, it's not out of play either. I mean, he sneaks into the playoff. He gets in on points, has a few good weeks, gets himself to that Final Four. Captain Clutch. Just, you never know, right? It would be crazy, but statistically doesn't look like it at this point. Looks like he's really in one hell of a slump that might be difficult for him to overcome. So Kurt Busch, speaking of veterans who are not in a slump, Kurt Busch is 7th place at Kansas. 8 top 10 of the finish of the 2019 season. He's 8th in points. That win seems like it's on the horizon too. I know that would be a cushion for this team. They got to get in. And there's weeks where he hasn't looked very good either. There's weeks where he's looked absolutely abysmal as well on the track, Kurt Busch. But for the most part, having a really good year, turned around the one-car's fortunes. I know they had a tough year with McMurray last year. Kurt's likely a playoff driver, having a great season. I hope he does well. I really hope he wins this thing and has a chance to get himself in another hunt there for the title. He stuck around pretty long in the playoffs the last couple of years, so he's got that longevity. 2nd championship we talked about, Hall of Fame credentials. Good finish for him. 8th place finisher Kyle Larson, so this is 2nd consecutive top 10 finish of the season. Gets himself now in the playoff hunt in the points. He's back in the playoff picture after looking on the outside looking in a couple weeks ago. Same scenario for Larson. Just got to keep this trend going. I know he's looking to get in the All-Star race. You have to race his way in this year. Get a fan vote. I don't know if the people are down on Kyle Larson, but I think unless he races his way in, which he probably could, he's got the talent. I don't see him being a part of the All-Star race this year. Could be wrong. Got to build on that success because for the rest of the season, this is going to dictate what transpires with Ganassi. You have that report that he may be out of Ganassi, looking for other opportunities elsewhere. Again, this is all rumor and innuendo. None of this is even legitimate facts, and we just got to wait and see for Kyle Larson. And I think Kyle Larson is at that point where we could see tremendous. This thing could turn around. The 42 car could be packed to where we want to see them. Well, up front, running up front, racing for the win. It just hit the wall last year. You got to overcome that. And I think Larson is on his way to doing that. Positive sign, those 2 top 10 finishes. But the story in my opinion, this was the story out of Kansas, other than the Ross Chastain win, which we'll talk about later. Tyler Reddick, in only his 2nd career Cup start, he ran the 531 car. Good to see that 31 car back in the top 10, was it not? 9th place finish. He outruns the regulars, Daniel Hemrick, Austin Dillon. 2nd career Cup start. Think about this. 9th place for Tyler Reddick. The defending Xfinity champion wins at Talladega. He's in his groove right now. And we talk so much about how he's a forgotten. Michael Waltrip hit it on the head this year. How he's kind of a forgotten champion. He's not even in the media. A lot of the media you see on this it pops up in the screen, the little graphic, Xfinity series. Rarely do you see Tyler Reddick. Rarely. You see Christopher Bell. Cole Custer, Justin Allgaier. Where the hell is that? Are we forgetting this guy? How good is he? 31 car. It's the third entry this week at RCR. Comes up with a 9th place run. Rising star. 4 wins in the Xfinity Series and 61 starts. 3 wins in the Truck Series. He was second in the standings in 2015. And RCR gets a hold of this guy from JR Motorsports for some reason. It doesn't work out for him. He's gone. And he could have been a Hendrick product. He could have been in the 48 car in the future. He still could be. But if RCR, this is a guy you want to retain. If you're Richard Childress Racing, you want to roll the contract out to this guy and say, I want you to sign long term. I want you in my stable, brother. Because how good is Tyler Reddick right now? He's got tremendous potential. I'm impressed if you can outrun him. And again, once that happened, and this is not fair to Daniel Hemrick. I read a report online, and this is off Racing Reference. There's a lot of goofs on that site. I love Racing Reference for the content and some of the historical content you can get on there. It gives you all the history of every series in motorsports, not just NASCAR. Great tool. But you're going to have goofballs on there who are going to go on there and say about Daniel Hemrick, who's having a tough rookie campaign. Yes, indeed he is. Very tough rookie campaign. He hadn't won a race in truck. He hadn't won a race in Xfinity. And I was concerned about that. Give me 1 second. But to throw him under the bus like you did, whoever wrote that comment, and not even worth mentioning your username because you're a goofball. You're going to go and criticize Daniel Hemrick. And I always said that about race car drivers. Don't shit on these guys unless you're armchair driving here. Armchair quarterbacking, armchair driving, whatever you want to call it. Get the fuck in the car and do it yourself. But you know what? You don't have that opportunity because you're not good enough to be even in the Cup Series. So fuck off, people, with burying Daniel Hemrick. Oh, I think RCR should look at this and put him out of the car. For what fucking reason? You tell me. For what fucking reason? The guy has a couple bad races. He's a rookie. He's learning. The organization has said many times they're very high on him. You look at what they have here. This is a strong organization, RCR. I know it doesn't show on the stat sheet. They don't really have the fastest cars. I know Austin Dillon got those 2 wins. They're sneaky as fuck, but he won. RCR, you even throw in the Ryan Newman win from a few years ago. RCR still keeping themselves relevant. They're like Hendrick. Once golden organization, they're going to be back on the upswing. Very soon. Very soon. And Reddick could be a part of that, but you're not going to throw Daniel Hemrick away so quickly. Give me, it just stuff like this gets me hot. It really does, because a guy has a bad, and Austin Dillon is the same thing. If it wasn't his granddad's team, fuck that. We all know that, but the fact of the matter is Austin Dillon has a bit of talent. He's a champion, for fuck's sakes, in this sport. And the people are going to come in here, these idiots who hide behind fucking screens and rip apart these guys. Come on, fuck. You know what? It is what it is, but it just gets me hot. But anyhow, Hemrick and Riddick are connected. As I said, they were both products of BK Racing in the Truck Series, and he produced a lot of good guys, did he not? BK Racing. Parker Kligerman, I still think, has a lot of potential, too. Here we go. Potential. I said it again, but these guys are still so good and have done great things and continue to impress. But to say that Daniel Hemrick is damaged and needs to be replaced. No. That's not even, whatever. Don't even get involved in that. It's complete bullshit. So moving on. And Reddick, I think if he gets a few more Cup starts this year, before we get to the next person here we're going to talk about. Reddick, I'm impressed, mighty impressed, and I think he's going to be in Cup maybe next year. We'll see. Chris Buescher, good run for him at Kansas, is it not? 10th place for him. He was 9th at Atlanta. Strong finish for JTG Daugherty. They've looked good on the intermediate tracks this year. I think they can build on this. JTG Daugherty is one of those other teams. I still think, as long as they've been around, they're like front row in a way, but they're a bit better than front row as far as, no, they got the same amount of wins as front row. But they're on the same level as front row, that no matter how the competition's increased or decreased, they still remain a constant in the sport. They get cars out there. They're running extremely well most weeks. Ryan Preece had that top 5 at Talladega. He looked very good at Atlanta. Both cars and JTG Daugherty could have been in the top 10 in Atlanta. So you look at Charlotte, they got their intermediate program. What could they do with Charlotte? I think they should focus on the 600. It'd be great to see those two guys run up front at the 600, even make the All-Star race. Not likely, but I think JTG Daugherty continues to build their credibility. Eventually could be a 3-car team. But I'm really happy they're still around. They're still plugging away. I'm a huge fan of both guys, and I think JTG Daugherty did the right thing. And I know A.J. Allmendinger's super popular. I'm a huge A.J. Allmendinger fan. We're going back to the Red Bull days. But I think the right decision was made here to stick with the sign Buescher long term, as he's still kind of on loan from Roush Fenway, and did a stint there with front row. And I think getting away from front row was smart for him. But JTG Daugherty, Chris Buescher, here's the irony. We say that the parallels between JTG Daugherty and front row wouldn't be ironic one day. Buescher wins he wins both for JTG Daugherty and front row. That's pretty cool. I take that back. I think front row has one more win than JTG Daugherty. I think. But anyway, I'm a statistician most of the time when I do these podcasts. I do a lot of my research, but this thing I'm going to say the David Reagan win, the Chris Buescher win. I'm going to say Allmendinger won one race, so 2-1. Let's call that fair. 2-1 in favor of front row over JTG Daugherty. Check the stats. I think I'm right. So Kevin Harvick, 13th place run, wins the pole here, leads 104 laps, remains winless in 2009. What's going on with Kevin Harvick, the closer, the guy who was so dominant and has been such a force, just looks like a shell of his former self this year. I know that's a strong statement, but I don't know if he's going to get close to the winner's circle anytime soon. It's looking not so hot for Kevin Harvick. But it's starting to look a lot like in number 17, he only won 2 races, but still was in the championship picture. So, I mean, can't quite count him out yet. Eric Almirola, 12th. Daniel Suarez, 14th. So, Stewart-Haas Racing didn't quite have the race they were hoping for at Kansas. And Stewart-Haas Racing's really falling behind here, I think, in their quest to keep up with Penske and JGR. They got to get a win somewhere. I don't care who wins for them. They need that win, and they need to get it sooner than later if they want to have any kind of chance of getting a lot of exposure this year, because Hendrick's catching up, folks. Hendrick is surpassing Stewart-Haas Racing here, and this has all of a sudden become a tight 3-car battle. Hendrick's got the win. Alex Bowman's knocking on the door. I just haven't seen much out of any of the Stewart-Haas Racing cars as of late, except for Clint Boyer, who seems to be chugging along. And Kyle Busch, that streak of consecutive top 5s to start the season, unfortunately, got snapped. 30th place run at Kansas. Some issues there. And, of course, he's going to whine and cry. You love that he whines and cries about and has an alibi for anytime things don't quite work out in his favor. So he'll remain tied with Morgan Shepherd. It's good for Morgan. The record's intact. Morgan's still on the record books there with old Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch and Morgan Shepherd, 11 consecutive top 10 finishes. Great streak. Round of applause for Kyle Busch. I was enamored by that. I think that's pretty cool. Could do it again this year, but just to start the season so strong. Much love for Kyle Busch, and I think as this continues to progress in his career, I just get more and more enamored by him, and have maximum respect for the things he does out there each and every week. Impressive. So Ross Chastain, the darling of NASCAR over the past, I don't know, 7-8 months. Well, he's been pretty popular for most of his career, but he's really getting a lot of fanfare. He gets his first camping, I keep saying Camping World. They changed the sponsor to Gander Outdoors truck win. 66 career starts. Very popular victory. The reception was absolutely, the crowd went crazy. Chastain is a really nice guy, the watermelon farmer from Florida. Y'all know his story. Get the fallout from the Ganassi, whatever, debacle from last year, and it's pretty unique, to see that Ross Chastain gets his due here, gets the win. That's awesome. I think good for him. I couldn't be happier for him. I think Kyle Larson tweeted out there, it was an Instagram post, dude, you should have declared points in the Truck Series. Has a chance to, could have been a champion. He would have gotten the playoffs, but I think he still could do that in Xfinity too. I could see him still winning one. But he's building a stock here for 2020, and essentially this is a huge win. We all know what he's been doing in Cup on a limited basis for that number of years. He's had some good finishes. Xfinity-wise, I think we would have been nice to see him in the Ganassi equipment to see how many races he could have won. Wins it, and this is what's impressive. He wins the race for an underfunded team, Al Nice. I don't know much about him. I know that looked at their stats. Not really impressive, but Ross Chastain gets a huge win at Kansas. Big for his career. I don't care what it is. He's got 2 wins now in each series. 1 win apiece, so 2 wins in the 2 lower tier series. He's had a phenomenal 7-8 months, as I said. First Cup top 10 was in the Daytona 500, and he wins the Xfinity race for Ganassi at Vegas in 2018. Should have won at Darlington too. I know Kevin Harvick got into him and just really cool story, this Ross Chastain, and I think he is building his stock for the future, and you could see a lot out of Mr. Chastain, whether it be with Ganassi or not. But when you start to make a presence for yourself and that build up, it's pretty cool to see. It is what it is, and I think Ross Chastain has a tremendous future. Could win a lot of races, even at the Cup level. It just needs that opportunity. I think he's building it. His stock is rising. Couldn't be happier. I love these stories of the underdogs that rise above here and do such great things. And I think it's really cool to see Ross Chastain in the winner's circle in the Truck Series. And he's a long time veteran of that series and did it all with underfunded teams. So it's really cool to see him and win with an underfunded team. So something else that came out of the media center on last Friday in Kansas, not this Friday, but the Friday before, was Bubba Wallace, who finally addressed some of the challenges he's facing away from the track. It's been tough, what's been going on. It's well documented how these things linger beyond racing. And he said he feels really good. It's tough out there, but it helps him to be behind the wheel of the car. And he's apparently battling depression. And it's from a person who's battling that himself. I really feel for this story, and I can empathize with Bubba Wallace because it is tough out there. And to see him break down in the media center, he couldn't hold back the tears. He's a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve, and I think he's a super popular driver. He's captivated. He's a very good follow on social media. If you don't follow him, please do. Very entertaining guy, and he says you can try to be you can try the best you can, and sometimes it ain't damn good enough. He's going through some things, and I know it's been very difficult with the status or the climate of the sport and the way RPM is struggling to keep up, and there's a lot of future. Is he going to be around much longer? Is RPM going to be here? I think Bubba Wallace is the driver that it's unfortunately just had a lot of poor luck. maintaining in his career. And like I said, with the Roush Fenway thing that gone bad, and here he is, and a lot of high hopes with this car at RPM. When he subbed for Eric Almirola, he looked really good. But I think it lingers beyond the track, as I said, and he's on the verge. He said he was on the verge of a breakdown, and I am what I am, he says. And the uncertainty, like I said, the tough season, Nixon, what's going on off the track, that tough season with RPM. The only highlight really that's been for him with RPM is that second place run at Daytona last year. Recent turn of events, they haven't. He said he hasn't been in a. He tweeted out he hadn't been in a good place for some time now, but going. Like I said, he was really been in a tough place, but going under the stands and after the race and hearing all those people chant his name and his support, that was nice. He said, "Lonely dark roads ain't fun. Keep on keeping on, I guess." So it's really been tough for him. He's been in a rough. It's been a rough moment a while. He says, just trying to do everything I can, and I hope things work out for him along the way. He's a good kid. Absolutely think he has a tremendous future in Cup. I don't know if it's going to be with RPM. It's probably not likely going to be with RPM. As I said, I just can't see this team surviving. Could get swallowed up. It could be a third entry for RCR, as they said. This is a satellite team for them. I absolutely think Bubba Wallace is a tremendous driver, and I think he's done some great things, and I hope that he continues to power through. And I know it's not easy, and I said someone who goes through the same thing, battling depression, it can be extremely difficult at times, but you just sometimes got to keep on going and find yourself and keep finding that way to things hopefully will get better. And I think it's really tough for him. But if any of you are interested in Bubba Wallace, as I said, most of you, he's appearing on Steve Harvey's show, I think this coming Monday or next, I think, yeah, this coming Monday. So check that out. It'd be pretty cool to see him on the Steve Harvey show and representing the African-American community in NASCAR. He's a tremendous individual. I'm a huge Bubba Wallace fan, and I think I really hope things turn around for him on and off the track real soon. So some other news, just give me 1 second here. With the kind of related, it's going to be fun to talk about. Hailie Deegan is to make her ARCA Series debut this Sunday at Toledo. I think this is going to be a huge step for Hailie. Competition in the ARCA Series. It's sort of grooming her, I think, for a truck run or an Xfinity run, because certainly Hailie Deegan, at only 17 years old, has impressed me and others in the motorsports industry, and 2 wins. She's 4th in the standings in the K&S West Series. She won last season and won this season. So this season she got one win, 3 top 5s, and 3 top 10s. Tremendous talent. I'm looking forward to seeing how she'll fare in the ARCA race. I think she's going to do tremendously well. And I'm just really happy that Hailie Deegan is moving up the ranks. And hopefully we see her behind the wheel of a truck, Gander Truck Series, or the Xfinity Series real soon. It's nice to see this, and I'm really happy for Hailie Deegan. As I said, I think this is she's got some good sponsors, got a great attitude. Nice to see her and just really doing really well, and I hope that continues past this season. So the All-Star race is coming up, as we know, this evening, Saturday. We're recording this podcast on a Saturday. So some All-Star race memories. I probably won't be watching. I might flicker in here and there, check what's going on, and I find the All-Star race takes a lot of patience to watch, and I just don't really have the patience for the All-Star race anymore like I used to. But some of the great All-Star fan vote, I don't know who's going to win that. I think Alex Bowman with his recent wins there. Ricky Stenhouse is a very popular guy. Moral wins for Bowman. He hasn't won yet. Bubba Wallace is very popular recently, what he's going through. It'd be cool to see him in there, get voted in. Kyle Larson's still very popular. So some of the fan votes through the years will run down the winners. Ken Schrader in 04. Who couldn't love Ken Schrader? I mean, Ken Schrader's, I know he hasn't won a lot of races in Cup, but he races anything with 4 wheels on it. 2 wheels. This guy is impressive. Huge Ken Schrader fan. Long time, very respectable guy. among his peers in the sport. Martin Truex Jr. in 05. Kyle Petty, we all know Kyle Petty, how popular that was in 06. And Kenny Wallace was practically on his hands and knees begging, gets the Furniture Row car in 07. Who could remember that? That's pretty funny. It was pretty entertaining how Kenny was on a mission to get in that year. He got in. Casey Kane in 08, Logano in 09, Carl Edwards in 2010, and we all know Dale Jr., so popular 2011, Bobby Labonte in 12. Danica Patrick in 2013, super popular. Danica was over like Rover. She's still over like Rover with me. Much love for Danica. Josh Wise in 2014, remember that BitCon? It was a big little promotion there. I voted for Josh Wise 1,000 times. That was pretty cool. See Josh Wise get in. Danica did it again in 15, and then Chase has done it the last 3 years, 16, 17, and 18. But Chase is in the main feature this year by virtue of his wins last year and his win at Talladega this year. Welcome to the All-Star race, Chase Elliott. So I want to share some of my, in the closing laps of this podcast, I want to share some of my favorite All-Star race memories. 98, Jeff Gordon. That Chrome 50th anniversary car leading the way on his way to certain victory. Runs out of fuel at the end. Mark Martin powers by in that Eagle 1 black slick car. Gets the win. Very popular win as the battle between Martin and Gordon waged on that year. Jeff would get the better of it in the end, but it was still a nice little piece there for Martin to take away the All-Star race. You won all the other races in 98, Jeff. You weren't winning the All-Star race that year, buddy. Ryan Newman in 02, winning in his rookie season, was a hot prospect for Penske at the time. The Alltel 02 car, later be the 12 car. Newman just blistered the field in that open. I think Johnny Benson Jr. finished second. Huge win for Ryan Newman. He's back in the All-Star race again this year. A little bit of nostalgia to see him if he were to get the job done. And Michael Waltrip in 96 with the Wood brothers. Who could ever forget that? Super popular win, not only for the Woods, because of how highly regarded the Woods are in NASCAR, but Waltrip, all-around nice guy. He hadn't won a points race at that point in the 21 car. Super popular guy, Michael Waltrip. Still is today. Would go on to have a tremendous success with DEIs. We know he'd win Daytona 500 twice later in his career, but at that point, that was probably the biggest win of his career. Really cool to see that happen. And then you have Kyle Busch in 2017. I think this is huge for him winning because it adds to his legacy, right? It cements it. I know he's done all he's done in the sport, but it's always cool to see him in the record books and what he's doing, because you're witnessing history, whether you like him or not. I know everybody, he's a heel motherfucker. He's still putting up these numbers. They're highly respectable. Absolutely love Kyle Busch, and I think he's a great individual, and he won the truck race yesterday. And Jamie McMurray in 14 was another favorite memory of mine. We all know McMurray's record at Charlotte. He wins in his second career start in the Silver Bullet Coors Light car. Almost won the Roval. That would have been pretty cool last year. He wins came close to the 600 in 2010. He's won the fall race in 2010 at Charlotte, and he's got a lot of success here. So he added the All-Star race to his record there. I think that would be pretty cool if someone could win the Roval, the All-Star race, and the 600. We did the Charlotte sweep. Don't have the stats in front of me, but is anyone who won the Roval last year? Ryan Blaney. So if Blaney can win the All-Star race, win the 600, Blaney would join the record books and say, I've won all three races there is at Charlotte, the All-Star, the 600, and the Roval. But someone could add themselves to that legacy this year if they can win the Roval, who's already won the 600 and won the All-Star race and the 600 if they can win the Roval in September. So I'm going to wave the white flag and checkered flag, green-white checker here on our edition of the super fantastic above average racing spectacular. I thank you all for listening. It's been a very, very eventful week in NASCAR. The 600 is coming up next Sunday, and the Indy 500 should be lots and lots of fun. Can't wait to see the 1,100 miles of race in action on Memorial Day weekend. Some pretty cool paint schemes, patriotic paint schemes as always roll out. Should be some pretty good storylines at Indianapolis. And I think until next week, you had been listening to the super fantastic above average racing spectacular, and I will see ya.